Alright, so this is going to be an updated video on the 650D, and basically I wasn't too pleased with the original video review I did of the 650D. It was one of the first videos I ever did, and I'm going to do something that's hopefully a little better this time. So I'll just give you a quick look around the case. As you know, you're probably familiar, it's got a plastic front bezel, but there's a thin layer of aluminum, brushed aluminum finish for the front, and then there's the section of mesh there with the dust filter and the power buttons and USB I/O stuff up at the front. At the top there's the hot swap bay. There's the mesh here. You can do two 120s, two 140s, or 200mm. But for the 200mm, it comes with a low profile 20mm design, which is thinner than the standard 25mm fans you usually get, and quite a bit thinner than the 30mm fans you get with Cooler Master cases, for example. On the far side door, you get the panel with no window, and also the same two clips for the door. And then on the back, fairly standard, you get a single 120 option for the fan, and with the power supply you get the hole so you can mount it with the fan up or the fan down. If you mount it with the fan down, you get a filter there. Each of these ports, or PCI slot covers, have a vent in them, as you can see. There's a couple of water-cooled grommets here, and they have soft rubber for the grommet there. Up at the top here, there's a little hole here, and I imagine the idea of that is the USB 3s at the front are a pass-through, so they don't give you an actual 19-pin header. They just give you a pass-through cable, and I guess you're supposed to pass it through there. I've hooked them up, but I've hooked them up with an adapter with a 19-pin on it, but I have been having trouble with the actual ports not working right with higher powered devices. So the ports on here, at least on my cases, seem to be malfunctioning a little bit. So there's the window. The window panel is a little bit thin, a little bit creaky, but it's not too bad. And you can see the problem that I have, the main problem with the door on this side, is that it's not very tall, because the clips there prevent the door from extending any further up, and I would like to see the door extend further up, because the way it is now you get to see a lot of the power supply, which I'm fine with, but you don't get to see the whole CPU socket area. Another thing about this is the surface here is pretty fingerprinty, so it gets a lot of fingerprints. One of the things with the doors as well is because the clips are up here and the hinge area is at the bottom instead of the hinge is usually at the front, so that kind of keeps the front fitting well. It keeps the door fitted well on the front panel area here. But in this case, because you don't have the hinge at the front, the door at the front doesn't fit very well, and so you can see there's quite a big gap. The same with this dust panel here. When you take it out, it's one of these ones you press to take it out. On mine, the little clip nub area actually broke, and I had to glue it on. And then when you do get it on, you'll see it fits pretty well up at the top, pretty well up at the bottom, but then around the middle area you can see there's quite a bit of gap there. Same with this door panel. You see on this door panel there's quite a bit of a gap there. So the fit, I'd like to see the fit of the panels and filters and stuff be a little bit better, a little bit snugger fit with that stuff. This thing here, I always thought there might be a bit of an issue with these little clips breaking, but I've had this for 8 months or so now, and I haven't had any trouble with it breaking yet. So no big complaints there. On the model that I got, there was a dent here and here, like the whole thing had been pressed down somehow. And I'm not sure how that would have happened in transit. Maybe it was something in the factory. Something happened where the back end was dented a bit on the case I got. And this mesh stuff is quite flimsy. There's quite a bit of flex in it, but a lot of roof panels are flimsy, so that's not a big deal. This hot swap bay, it's some of them have been done in a way where the whole drive fits in flat and then slides in, so you can actually close the cover up and close the whole drive in. With this one, you get the drive and it sticks out while it's in there, so it's not the most discreet hot swap ever. That's what it looks like with a 3.5 inch drive in, so you can see it sticks out quite a lot from the roof. But if you've got a 2.5 inch drive in there, it's not too bad, it doesn't stick out. But with neither size drive, you can actually close the bay. But that's probably better for cooling anyway. Up at the top here, you do get a small switch, which is a fan controller, and so you can do low, medium, and high for up to 4 fans. And it's just a small basic thing, but I do think that is nice, because it's nice to be able to just hook up all your fans and be able to control the speed quickly and easily if you want to. Around the bottom, there's 2 sets of feet. With the front feet, the grip is softer, and the screw is right around the center here. So if you want to take the foot off for whatever reason, you're going to need to either take the grip off altogether and then try to put it back on, or like I've done, make a small hole in it, or you could also cut it in half right around here and then have just half the grip. At the back for the foot, the material seems to be harder. It doesn't have the same soft foam feel that the front one has, but I'm not entirely sure what it is made of. And I don't know if there's a screw in the same place for this one or not. And you can see the dust filter for the back. You just slide it out. If you've got your fan facing down, you get the dust filter and you can pull that out from the back there. So the bottom's fairly plain, there's not much to it. Another thing I'll make note of really quick with the finish of the front is that it looks really nice. You know, it looks like it could easily be solid aluminum all the way through. The only problem with it though is it does attract dirt and marks quite easily, and it scuffs quite easily, so you've got to be a little bit careful with while you're touching it if you want to, you know, make sure it looks good all the time. Personally, I'm not too fussed about it. You know, when I'm just using the case normally, I just don't even think about it, and so it never bothers me, but it's worth noting that it does scuff and mark easily. A note about the front filter is, like I said, you press it and then it comes off easily, and that's good that it comes off easily. There's a filter in there for dust, but it does come off a little too easily, in a sense that if you're carrying it and you hold it near the front, I've had it fall off by accident a couple times just while I was carrying the case, so you want to keep that in mind, and maybe I would suggest just taking the filter off if you're carrying the case, just to be safe. Now, this is the stock mesh that comes. You get a 200mm fan at the front, the same low profile 20mm one that you get in the top. And I find that circular mesh design was a little bit loud, and the fans that come with it aren't the greatest. So what I did was just with the Dremel cut it out, and then used a couple of the holes in the mesh, as you can see here, to mount a couple of Noctua 120s in the front there. And so there's none of this mesh really left. It's only the filter at the front, which doesn't seem to make any noise. There's also quite a bit, maybe 1.5 inches, maybe even 2 inches worth of space between the fans and the filter, so that's probably a contributing factor why it doesn't make much noise with the mesh, but that mesh behind it does make noise because it's right up against the fan. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is the fans aren't the greatest, and they're quite loud, the fans themselves, and then with the mesh it contributes to the noise level. Inside it's pretty good. One thing I want to make note of though is with a Lamptron FC6 fan controller that I had briefly, the mounting holes on that for the front didn't line up with the mounting holes here. It's fixed mounting holes in this case. There's no grooves for adjustable mounting. So what I had to do in order to actually mount it was take the front holes for the optical bay and file them forward to make them into a groove so that I could mount the Lamptron fan controller. So, you know, there's all the standard stuff. It's got a grommet up there, or rather a cable routing hole with no grommet for the 8-pin. I'm actually running the 8-pin past the motherboard, behind the motherboard, but it's up there and it's a good size. Up there there's a big compartment for cables, which is good to route them around the back. Up at the top here, I believe you can do an H100 with one set of fans, something like that, you know, within reason. At the front here, there's hard drive cages. There's 2 sets of 3s, and you can break them up. You can take the top section out, you can mount it down at the bottom here, you can take both sections out, and this little stand here that raises up the bottom hard drive cage, you can take that out. There's that's screwed in from the bottom, so you can unscrew that and take it all out if you want, and then, you know, you could have an SSD or a hard drive mounted in the optical bays with an adapter, and, you know, do your own mod with a radiator at the front or whatever you want. One thing I'll note about the stock hard drive trays though is that they're quite thin and quite flexible, and this one actually broke just while I was bending it sort of the normal way, and also these little tabs at the front here where you go to pull, you grab them to pull the drive out. One of the tabs on this cage actually broke as well, just while I was pulling a drive out. So they could be, you know, a little bit more flint sturdy, and I would prefer to see that. So the bottom of the case has a little bit of flex in it. The motherboard tray has a bit of flex in it, but you know, once you get your motherboard in there, you get everything in there, you're not going to be sitting there flexing it. But the whole case, when it is built up and you go to move the case, you get some shiftiness and some flex in the whole frame of the case. So sometimes if you go to pick it up, the whole case can, you know, sort of shift a little bit. And also the doors, remember I was talking about the fit of the doors. The actual doors, the fit of those will change a little bit depending on what way the frame is shifted. Now you might be thinking that's because I cut out you know, a huge portion of the front, and that's true, I did do that, and I'm sure that didn't help the rigidity of the entire case, but it did do the same sort of shifting even when I did have the front stuff still in, because I had the front stuff still in for, you know, a few months before I cut it out, and it still did that. So, you know, cable routing, this is a normal ATX motherboard, and so this grommet here is level with the bottom of the motherboard, but there's also another grommet right around here. So if you've got a smaller motherboard, MATX or whatever, there's a grommet that will line up with the bottom of that smaller board. So that's really nice, because sometimes if you've got a smaller board, you know, you're gonna have to run the cables all the way from the bottom of the small board, which could be here, all the way down to the grommets, which could be here or even lower. One thing I would have liked to have seen though is a little cable routing hole just around here on the motherboard tray, because if you've got something like an NZXT lighting kit and you've got the little switch here, that's going to need to be routed out to the back. And same if you've got the front panel audio thing here, that needs to be routed all the way from here, and the nearest grommet's here, so it needs to make a path all that way. If there was a little cable routing hole here, we could pass the front panel audio stuff out there, straight out, and it would be a little neater, and then we could also do that with the lighting stuff if we had it. So that's another thing that I would have liked to have seen, but it's another small thing. As far as coolers and fit, well, I've got the D14 in there now, and it fits alright. And I've also got Intel Extreme Masters RAM in there, so the fan is fitted a couple notches out from where it would be stock, and it still has no problem with the door. And you can see the 14mm fan as well is sticking out even further, and it doesn't collide with the door at all. So cooler wise, you should be fine. I don't know if there's anything that's much bigger than that. The Silver Arrow might be a little bit bigger, I'm not sure, but the D14 with the fans notched out a few notches fits no problem. One thing I did notice though is, and I'm sure it's not anything to do with this case in particular, but when you've got the door shut, there is some dust buildup right around here and here where the two fans are. So some of the dust will just build up a little bit on the door, which is probably just any case that would be the case, nothing specific to this. Around the back, it's fairly common, except there's a few things that I don't like about it. But first, the motherboard tray cutout, the CPU cutout is large, and that's good. The grommets are soft and good rubber, although I'd like to see a few more flaps in them, just so that you could run cables like this big motherboard one without, you could have more fine flaps, so that you wouldn't have to bend this whole big flap just to get the motherboard cable through. As far as the cable routing management clips, they're a little small, so it's hard to get your actual cable tie through them. Even those tiny 2.5mm 4-inch ones, you can't really get them through without kind of forcing it a little bit, and so I'd like to see bigger loops. And then the actual space, the space is a little bit small. Even if you've got the cables routed really neat, the door sometimes won't close right, so you need to, just make sure the cables are really neat and really kind of almost like perfect. So I would have liked to seen a little bit more space behind the door. But other than that, it's good. And then, but just like I said, the panels don't always fit very well, and then if you've got a cable sticking out a little bit more than it should, then that's just going to make the fit of the panel even worse. So, for a conclusion, if I had to make one, I guess what I would say is that looks-wise, the case looks really nice. Airflow-wise, I've never had any trouble with it, although I'm not actually using the stock fans, I'm using Noctua fans. With the stock fans, the airflow is okay too, but the noise levels are a little higher. Functionality-wise, it's good. It has all the sort of standard functions you would expect. Big coolers fit, cable routing is good, hard drive cages, there's flexibility there. Looks-wise, I think it looks really, really, really good. It's very minimal, very clean, so if you like that, then it looks good. But quality-wise, I would have liked to have seen a little bit better quality. But you can get this for $149 now, and I'd say for $149, maybe have a look at something like the Fractal Design Arc MIDI R2, or the Fractal Design Define R4, or other things, maybe something from Lee, and then weigh your options. But I'd say for $149, this is still a good case.